head-to-head confrontation is the very essence, the heart and soul of sport. It is not man against the clock, but man against man and woman against woman. Often in sports, the challenge of a worthy opponent spurs an athlete to do what even he might have considered impossible. I'm Rafer Johnson. Such a challenge once inspired me in the Decathlon in 1960. Mine was, I'm happy to say, a friendly rivalry. A rivalry with a man I knew very, very well. Many people looked at C.K. Young on the track in Rome and saw my opponent. I looked at him and saw my college buddy from right here at UCLA. He was my training partner and my friend. You'll learn more about the two of us later in this videotape. While I was fortunate enough to enjoy a spirited but healthy rivalry, a rivalry in the Chariots of Fire tradition, others have endured ill feeling and even ugliness during their Olympic showdowns. In 1956, the water polo team from Hungary battled the team from the Soviet Union, and I mean battled. The water ran red, goes the legend of that game. The bloody brawl had to be called off because there was no other way to stop the fighting in the pool. There was little love lost between runners Mary Decker and Zola Budd, or between sprint rivals Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson. Do you remember the dramatic way those rivalries ended on the track? You'll relive them in just a few moments. These stories that you are about to see and hear are often poignant ones. In rivalry, there is poignancy, because one of the worthy athletes must lose. Young and I realized that back in 1960. This made the build-up and the aftermath of our competition more intensely emotional. The Olympics are drenched in emotion from opening ceremonies to closing ceremonies, but at no time during the games does the passion reach the pitch that it does in the great confrontations. In the Olympics, long brewing rivalries end in showdowns, in once-in-a-lifetime duels. These are moments of peak tension and peak excitement. Watch them and recall the thrill.
The opening ceremony of the first Olympiad, Athens, 1896. From that moment forward, each new Olympiad has been a time of celebration. It is a time for the athletes of the world to convene, to cast aside political and cultural differences, and compete for the honor of their countries and themselves. But the opening ceremony of any Olympic Games is also a time of great expectations for that one confrontation, athlete against athlete, team against team, for which each Olympiad is remembered. Confrontations at the Olympic Games are as eternal as the flame. In 1988, IOC President Samaranch ushered in the Games of Seoul. The elation of the ceremonies would give way to the fire of competition. 1 week later, the Olympic Stadium hosted the confrontation, for which it will be possibly best remembered. Carl Lewis arrived in Seoul as the defending champion in the 100 meters, one of 4 gold medals he captured in 1984. Now, he would attempt to become the first man in Olympic history to successfully defend a sprint title. But he would do so with a heavy heart. 16 months earlier, his father had died of cancer. While the patriarch of the Lewis family was laid to rest, in his hand was Carl's gold medal from the 100 meters in Los Angeles. As he began defending his title in this opening heat, Lewis appeared primed to win again. But he knew that there was one man who stood between him and history, Canadian Ben Johnson. The bronze medalist in the 100 meters at the 1984 Olympics, Johnson had run in Lewis's shadow through the first half of the 1980s. But at the 1987 World Championships, he had snatched the title of world's fastest human when he defeated Lewis and shattered the world record with a time of 9.83. Now, the final of the men's 100 meters. The Olympic showdown that Ben Johnson had waited 4 years for was at hand. It would be settled in less than 10 seconds. As the 8 finalists settled into their starting blocks, everyone knew that Johnson, as was his trademark, would explode at the start. The question was whether Lewis could catch him. Johnson, running in lane 6, established an early lead. Halfway into the race, he ran a few meters ahead of Lewis, a margin that could be overcome by the incredible acceleration that Lewis usually had. But moments later, Lewis glanced at his opponent and saw the Canadian pull even further in front. Carl Lewis was beaten. Johnson had given Canada its first Olympic gold in a sprint event in 60 years. His time was an unbelievable 9.79. To Lewis, it was unthinkable. But as Johnson received his gold medal, he was haunted by the truth. For 7 years, he had taken steroids to improve his athletic performances. 3 days later, he would be sent back to Canada in disgrace, having failed a routine drug test. Carl Lewis now would receive the gold medal after all. In 1972 in Munich, another great confrontation had been anticipated in the 100 meters. Americans had won the event in 7 of the 8 previous Olympiads. Eddie Hart, who had equaled the world record that summer, was primed to extend that dominance. Yet the favorite was not an American, but a Soviet, Valery Bortsov. Bortsov was the stereotypical Soviet athlete, one whose success was not attributed to raw natural talent, but to scientific study. He was a product of the Kiev Institute of Physical Culture, where coaches and scientists had developed a model for sprinting. Unbeaten in close to 2 years, Bortsov was proving such studies to be sound. Eddie Hart was not a finalist in the 100 meters. 1 day earlier, he and teammate Ray Robinson had missed their quarterfinal heats because, unbelievably, their coach had consulted an outdated schedule. The third American, Robert Taylor, had arrived at the stadium just in time, and now he alone carried U.S. hopes into the final.
Cornelius Shaw was first out of the blocks. Bortsov's out there, so is Robert Taylor. One runner's pulled up, but it's Taylor against the 2 Russians. Here they come, and Bortsov has won the gold medal. Robert Taylor is second. And I think Lennox Miller came in third and then pulled up immediately. But Valery Bortsov of the Soviet Union is the gold medalist in the games of the 20th Olympiad.
9 days later, Hart would finally run against Bortsov. They would meet in the anchor leg of the 4x100 meter relay.
And he's out like a jet, like
Slow
a locomotive.
Black, too. Cornelia with a fast start. Black with a slow start. Now Black trying to make up that ground. He's not making it up right now. The Russians are in the lead.
Russians just handed off slightly ahead of the Americans, Jim. Taylor now taking for the Americans.
Robert Taylor making up ground for the
Moving,
Russians.
really moving, Jim. Look at it. He's pulling up.
Tremendous leg by Taylor. Let's see what Tinker does.
Tinker got out better today. He got out a lot better in that handoff.
We may have the confrontation.
He's got ahead.
Eddie Hart against Bortsov. Here it comes. The Americans have the lead.
He looks terrific.
Bortsov. Eddie Hart trying to outrun Bortsov. Trying to outrun the world's fastest human. And he's done it. The United States has won.
Tying the world record, Jim. They tied it. They had to.
Look at this fella. Look at Eddie Hart from California. It looked like he just wouldn't get a chance to run against Bortsov, but he did. And he beat him. Eddie Hart, who was heartbroken, dissolved into tears after that terrible moment when he missed his starting time for the quarterfinal of the 100 meters, will go home with something. He'll go home with a gold medal, and he knows that he looked Bortsov in the eye, and he beat him.
Eddie Hart would never know what might have been if he had run the 100 meters. But he did know what was. He had confronted Valery Bortsov and won. At the 1956 Olympics, the battle for gold in figure skating was waged between 2 Americans, Tenley Albright on the right and Carol Heiss on the left. Albright was the reigning world and American champion, but she had spent the last 3 years holding off her younger rival.
Well, Tenley and I really didn't know each other that well. We knew each other from championships, but she lived in Boston. She was 5 years older, had a different lifestyle, a different way of life from the girl from New York City, which was me. My father was a baker. I worked very hard at the skating, as Tenley did, but our backgrounds, our social backgrounds were different, so we really didn't see each other that much off the ice. And I think the age difference made a tremendous difference in us, because when I was 15, she was 20, and a lot of 20-year-olds don't really socialize that much with 15 years old.
2 weeks before the Olympics, Albright slashed her right leg with her skate, and her father flew to Cortina to mend it. But on the day of the ladies' final, she skated with the maturity of a champion and captured the first place votes of 10 of the 11 judges. Heiss, who had finished second to Albright at the 3 previous U.S. championships and the 1955 World Championships, once again had to settle for the silver. Tenley Albright had won her Olympic gold. Carol Heiss would go on to win a gold of her own at the 1960 Olympics. American Brian Boitano and Canadian Brian Orser engaged in one of the greatest head-to-head confrontations in Olympic history at the 1988 Olympic Games in Calgary. It was billed as the Battle of the Bryans. Boitano and Orser, both former world champions, were the two finest figure skaters of their day. They had battled each other for 10 years, from junior competitions to now, the Olympic Games. Each knew that it would take near perfection to win.
Pretty much growing up together when you think, from the ages of 14 and 16 until 24 and 26. That's 10 years of your life that we pretty much grew up together, and it was nice that we were friends, because you wouldn't want to have 10 years of, some kind of stress between two people. It was nice. We were both good competitors. We were both mature about it. He made me a much better skater than I ever dreamt that I would be, and I'd like to think I did the same for him.
The original program would set the stage. Orser was Canada's strongest gold medal candidate in Calgary, so he carried the hopes of a nation. In the past, he might have buckled under such a burden. But on this night, he skated brilliantly. Boitano followed and was equal to the challenge. Although Orser won the original program, Boitano's performance in the compulsory figures gave him the slimmest of leads heading into the free program. The Battle of the Bryans was living up to all expectations.
I think the only time in my life that I can remember exactly what happened at every moment is during the short and the long program in Calgary. When you put on a videotape, it could be at any point in the program, and it can be from Calgary, and it can be my performance, and I remember what I was thinking, how I was feeling, how I was trying to motivate myself.
Boitano skated first.
Music from Napoleon and Josephine, a miniseries. He said he heard the music and immediately knew it was for him.
This spread eagle worth the equivalent of any triple jump.
Listen to this. Everything he had was in that. Backstage, Brian Orser hears that.
You know, it simply does not matter what happens. Look at him. He's absolutely going through his own movements. Absolutely going through his own movements.
And he still hears it.
You remember, he was the fellow who told his coach to turn on the shower to drown out the applause for one of his competitors a number of years ago. I think he's working very hard now to keep his concentration steady.
Then came Canada's own Brian.
If he skates brilliantly tonight, it will show that he has completely overcome the fears and nervousness he has in the past.
Kind of unusual to see him shaking his fist there as he went out to begin the performance.
brilliant triple Lutz.
Later in his program, Orser prepared for the jump that would decide the gold medal.
Now, he did not reach back far enough with his free toe pick. Could that cause that?
Could that be the difference?
He looks just a little bit tired.
Is this Canada's first Olympic men's figure skating champion?
Moments later, Orser learned his fate. Second place. Backstage, Orser was consoled by Sandra Bezic, Boitano's choreographer. The Battle of the Bryans was over. Boitano was ranked first by 3 judges, Orser by 4. 2 had them tied. But Boitano's superior technical marks broke the tie. Each had risen to the challenge, but this time Boitano had risen higher. It was a confrontation that enthralled anyone who understood the burden of expectations, such as Katarina Witt. Falling 7 days after the Battle of the Bryans, the ladies' singles competition warranted the same anticipation. Witt, the torchbearer of the East German sports program, was attempting to become the first woman since the legendary Sonja Henie to win back-to-back Olympic gold medals. But in her way stood the only person who had defeated her in 5 years, 1986 world champion Debi Thomas of the United States. Both had chosen the music of Carmen for their free program. While Thomas's routine was technically more difficult, Witt possessed an artistic style and persona that captivated audiences and judges. 4 years earlier at the Olympics in Sarajevo, an 18-year-old Witt had won the gold medal as an underdog. Now, as she took to the ice for her free program, she did so as the favorite.
Smashing.
Yes, solid opening. This is the section of the program where she really draws the audience in and uses her acting ability.
But not her skating ability. This is a posing section.
Well, this
Carmen seems to fall when the poses occur. poses, but skating the drama of it, really wonderful.
Do the program. I know you can do this. We've been together. Let's make it last competitor from the United States. Showdown maturity. Debi Thomas. Your moment. Now, do it.
Your moment, do it. That's what he said. Even over, by the way, it dropped all the way down to 6. So this is it. It's time to compare Carmen's.
Double-footed, the second triple toe.
Later, she would say that in her mind, the gold medal, her singular goal, had already been lost. She would endure 3.5 minutes of agony.
What a sad moment. Well, there it is for Debi Thomas. Not her best moment.
Perhaps the only skaters who skated to the utmost of their ability tonight were Midori Ito and Elizabeth Manley.
Thomas lost not only the gold medal, but the silver as well. She finished 3rd behind Witt and Elizabeth Manley of Canada. The 1968 Olympics were contested in the rarefied air of Mexico City, over 7,000 feet above sea level. The favorite in the 1,500 meters was American Jim Ryun. Ryun emerged from the cornfields of his native Kansas in 1966 when he broke his first world record in the mile. Now, 2 years later, he appeared primed to become the first American in 60 years to win the Olympic 1,500 meters. Far from the cornfields of Kansas in the mountains of Africa came Ryun's greatest competitor, Keino of Kenya. As a child, Keino had run back and forth to school. As a man, he had run through the mountains to prepare for the altitude of Mexico City. The 28-year-old Keino was a member of the Nandi tribe that resided in western Kenya. He was destined to follow in the footsteps of his father and become a goat herder and farmer in the Rift Valley. But Mexico City would alter his destiny. The final of the 1,500 meters. Accustomed to Mexico City's high altitude, Keino and his Kenyan teammate Ben Jipcho moved immediately to the lead and set the early pace. Ryun settled to the back. Keino's strategy was simple: build a commanding lead to negate Ryun's famous kick. Keino moved into the lead at 400 meters and continued at a pace that most experts deemed to be suicidal. But Keino was about to prove he was no ordinary man. Already in these Olympics, Keino had run the 5,000 meters, winning a bronze medal, and the 10,000 meters. But amazingly, he showed no signs of fatigue in the final lap of the 1,500 meters. Ryun used his superior kick to move into second place with 200 meters remaining in the race. But on this day, no one would catch Keino. Ryun drew to within 10 meters, but no closer. Keino won the race by 20 meters, the largest margin of victory in a 1,500-meter final in Olympic history. His time was a personal record by 1.8 seconds, and the fastest time ever run at high altitude. That same day in Kenya, Keino's wife gave birth to their third daughter. She was named Olympia in honor of his victory. Never again would he lead the quiet life of a Nandi farmer. 4 years later in Munich, the great Keino-Ryun confrontation ended tragically. Because of a computer error, the two runners were placed in the same preliminary heat for the 1,500 meters.
Jim Keino leading the race. Ryun, oh, he fell down. Jim Ryun's down the track. His effort may be over. It looked like he was almost unconscious. Well, he get up and finish the race, can he? Jim Ryun limping. The ultimate disaster appears to have occurred.
Kip Keino would win the heat and eventually a silver medal in the event. For his great rival Jim Ryun, these would be his last moments ever of Olympic competition. In 1984, the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum hosted the Olympic Games for the second time. But in spite of all its great champions, one of its most memorable moments was written by two non-medal winners in the women's 3,000 meters. A woman who had run her first race just miles away, and another who had run her first race in a country that was barred from the Games. Mary Decker of the United States was a world record holder and world champion, but she didn't have an Olympic gold. Early in the race, Decker was stalked by the barefooted Zola Budd. In January of that year, Budd had bettered Decker's world record in the 5,000 meters. That would have established her as an Olympic medal contender, except for one fact. She was from South Africa, a country that was barred from the Olympics because of apartheid. For that March, she had moved to England, birthplace of her grandfather, and became a British citizen. There were 1,300 meters remaining in the race when their names became forever linked.
Now it is Zola Budd edging to the front. Decker in red in second. Sly is third. Kuika in fourth. That group of four now begins to extend its advantage over the rest of the pack. Zola Budd has the lead when they cross the line. This time around, there will be 3 laps to go. With a barefoot Budd, Decker falls down. Mary Decker falls down in the infield.
It was Zola Budd's inexperience. She cut in on Mary Decker too soon. Mary stepped on her once and stepped on her again.
The two runners had bumped rounding the curve. Thrown off balance, Budd's leg shot out to the left in front of Decker, who then tripped on Budd's right leg, lost balance, and went down. A jury of appeal later ruled no one was at fault. With less than 500 meters remaining in the race, Budd lost contact with the leaders. The pace and her emotions proved to be too much. With the gold and silver medals now out of reach, Budd tried to hold on for the bronze, but even that would fall from her grasp. The gold medal, the one Mary Decker thought would be hers, was won by the 34-year-old Romanian, Marisha Puica. Zola Budd eventually finished 7th. Decker's day of expected Olympic glory ended in tears of agony. The Olympic flag commanded center stage during the opening ceremony of the 1980 Olympic Games in Moscow. But everyone knew that it would be the Union Jack that would fly high on the day of the men's 800-meter final. Steve Ovett had spent the last 2 years rewriting the record books. So had his countryman, Sebastian Coe. They both ran for the greater glory of Britain, but they rarely ran against each other. The 800 meters in Moscow was their first head-to-head confrontation in 2 years. Coe entered the race as the world record holder and the favorite. The final of the 800 meters evolved into a slow, strategic race, with neither Coe nor Ovett dictating the pace. As the field of 8 passed through the 400-meter mark, both Ovett and Coe were in trouble. Ovett was boxed against the rail behind 5 runners, while Coe was running in last place. Down the backstretch, Ovett was able to elbow his way through the pack and eventually moved behind the new leader, Nikolai Kirov of the Soviet Union. Coe continued to flounder. He appeared uncertain as to how to move from the back of the pack to within striking distance of Ovett. When he finally made his move, here, it was too late.
Coe's coming round the outside, but Ovett has burst to the lead. Has Coe left it too late? Ovett's ahead. 50 meters to go. I think Ovett's going to win it. Coe is finishing quickly, but Ovett makes
makes it fast. The gold medal to Ovett, the silver to Coe.
Ovett and Coe had grown accustomed to setting world records. This race hardly approached that. His winning time was exactly the same as his 5th place time at the 1976 Olympics. But to Steve Ovett, it didn't matter. He had won the gold medal that was supposed to go to Sebastian Coe. After the race, Coe admitted that he had run the worst race of his life. On the victory stand, he grudgingly congratulated Ovett. 5 days later, they met again in the 1,500 meters.
And into the home straight, and round the outside comes Coe. Ovett has responded. It's going to be a sprint to the line. Coe is in the lead. 50 meters to go. Coe is in the lead. Ovett's tiring on the outside. He's not going to make it. Coe gets the gold. Shroud the silver. Ovett has to settle for bronze.
For Coe, this was the redemption he sought after what he considered his failure in the 800. Four years later, Coe and Ovett met for the final time at the Olympics in the 1,500 meters, but both appeared to be past their zenith. Coe had suffered through 2 seasons of injury and illness and had been written off by the British press. However, he had come back to repeat as the silver medalist in the 800 meters. Ovett, meanwhile, was fighting a case of bronchitis here in Los Angeles. He had collapsed after finishing close to 10 seconds behind in the 800 meters and spent 2 days in the hospital.
Meanwhile, Ovett is beginning to move a bit. Spivey also has a big kick, the other American, the rail-thin Jim Spivey, number 941. Currently in 5th, and Ovett just quit. Ovett just went to the infield. Ovett's had problems this week, as you well know, collapsing at the finish the other day, so he is done. Steve Ovett is out of the race. It's still Abascal leading. Coe is right there, and here comes Cram as well. About half a lap to go.
Although he has dropped off the pace, has a great rush in the last 100, but it's the 2 Englishmen.
It's Coe, it's Sebastian Coe, and it's Cram, and it's Abascal in 3rd place. It's Sebastian Coe, the world record holder at 800 meters and the mile, the 1980 Olympic champion. Here comes Cram, the world champion. It's going to be Coe and Cram, and it doesn't look like Cram's going to catch him. It's Sebastian Coe extending his lead, and Sebastian Coe on his way to the finish. Sebastian Coe wins the gold medal.
And so the final chapter was written in a great confrontation between countrymen that had spanned 2 Olympics.
C.K. Young and I were friends at UCLA. We were both trained under the legendary Ducky Drake. There, the similarities ended. I was a graduate student from Kingsburg, California, and Young was an undergrad from the island of Formosa. He had visited the United States and had decided to stay. One of the hardest things about competing in the decathlon in Rome was focusing on my performance. I knew that my friend was completely focused on his, and I wanted to beat him at his very best. We could never be called enemies, but when you're going head-to-head for 2 days and 10 events, and you knew from event number 1 that this guy, this friend, is your biggest threat, well, you just can't soften.
The victor in the decathlon in 1960 would embody the 3 bywords of the Olympics: faster, higher, stronger. Rayford Johnson of the United States, C.K. Young of Taiwan. Their confrontation would be played out over 2 days through torrential rains and long into the Roman night. From the opening event, the 100 meters, the battle lines were drawn. Smaller and lighter, Young held the edge in the running events and the jumps. Johnson's objective was to remain as close as possible. In both the 100 and 400 meters, he lost by only 0.2 of a second. In the high jump, Johnson cleared 6 feet 3/4 of an inch. Young could beat him by only 2 inches. While Johnson's size was a detriment in some events, it proved to be a decided advantage in the throws. In the penultimate event, the javelin, he beat Young by 5 feet to extend his overall lead. As they entered the final event, the 1,500 meters, Johnson's lead was a scant 67 points. He would have to stay within 10 seconds of Young, whose personal record in the event was close to 20 seconds faster. Johnson shadowed Young from the beginning of the race. Despite Young's repeated attempts to pull away in the final lap, Johnson was only 6 yards behind as they approached the finish. Rafer Johnson had become the 8th American to win the gold medal in the decathlon, following in the footsteps of legendary figures like Jim Thorpe and Bob Mathias. C.K. Young would have to settle for the silver, Taiwan's first medal in the history of the Olympic Games. For 2 days, Johnson and Young had fought for the gold medal, drawing upon every ounce of energy, every bit of courage. And when it was over, their friendship was renewed. The confrontation between Rafer Johnson and C.K. Young may be the ultimate struggle between individuals in the history of the Olympic Games. But confrontations follow many scripts, and oftentimes the most memorable are not athlete against athlete, but team against team. At the 1956 Olympic Games in Melbourne, Hungary's water polo team defeated the Soviet Union in a bloody brawl. That match came just a month after 200,000 Soviet troops invaded Hungary to squelch an uprising against communist rule. But nothing could match the Cinderella story of the U.S. hockey team in 1980. When Captain Mike Eruzione scored, the Americans took a 4-3 lead over the Soviet Union.
11 seconds. You've got 10 seconds. The countdown going on right now. Morrow up to Schultz. 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Some confrontations aren't nearly as clear-cut. The U.S. basketball team entered the final at the 1972 Olympics with a 62-game winning streak spanning 8 Olympiads. Yet in the final minute of the game, the Americans trailed by a point, and Coach Hank Iba was looking for a miracle. Doug Collins appeared to have delivered with 6 seconds left in the game. Soviet star Sasha Belov inadvertently threw the ball to Collins, who raced toward the American basket, only to be intentionally fouled with 3 seconds left on the clock. Collins calmly sank the first free throw to draw the United States even, 49-49. He then sank the second free throw to give the Americans their first lead of the game. The Soviets inbounded the ball, but timeout was called with 1 second remaining on the clock.
They're changing the clock is what they're doing. They're going back to 3 seconds is what the PA announcer said. So we'll have to speculate that it's all over.
But the game was not over. The Soviet coach, Vladimir Kondrashkin, claimed that he had called timeout before Collins' second free throw. The president of the International Basketball Federation interceded and demanded that 3 seconds be placed on the clock. The Soviets inserted Ivan Yedeshko into the lineup. He threw a length of the floor pass to Belov, who scored the winning basket. The game ended in controversy. The final score, 51-50. The Soviets celebrated their first gold medal in men's basketball. The American team, shocked and frustrated, could only look on in disbelief. The United States filed a protest with the jury of appeal, but lost 3-2. The 3 votes to uphold Belov's basket were all cast by representatives of Iron Curtain countries, Hungary, Poland, and Cuba. The American players subsequently voted unanimously to refuse their silver medals and would not join the Soviets on the victory stand. To this day, the medals are locked in a Munich bank. Several members of the U.S. team have written into their wills that the medals never be accepted by their heirs under any circumstances. For 4 Olympiads, the U.S. had dominated women's swimming. But in Montreal, Shirley Babashoff and teammates encountered a new challenger, world record holder Cornelia Ender and the women from East Germany. Babashoff was a native of Southern California and was the golden girl of American swimming. she rode into Montreal as the favorite in as many as 3 individual events. Ender was symbolic of the East German program. She had devoted her life to swimming, moving away from home to attend a special sports school. She made her Olympic debut in Munich at the age of 13. Now, in these 1976 Olympics, her experience would carry the day. She shattered the 100-meter freestyle record, then anchored East Germany to a record in the medley relay. But her most remarkable accomplishment was still to come. She equaled her own world record in the 100-meter butterfly, en route to her 3rd gold medal. Just 20 minutes later, she returned to the pool deck for her head-to-head confrontation with Babashoff in the 200-meter freestyle. For the 4th time in the Games of the 21st Olympiad, Ender had entered the Olympic pool and emerged with a gold medal and a world record. She became the first female swimmer in history to win 4 gold medals in a single Olympics. Shirley Babashoff hadn't been nearly as successful. She collected 4 silvers, finishing behind East Germans each time. The final women's event of the Games was the 4x100-meter freestyle relay. The East Germans had won 11 gold medals. The United States had won none. The final confrontation between Ender and Babashoff would not be athlete against athlete, but team against team. Ender swam the lead-off leg for the East Germans, who hoped to build an insurmountable lead. With 150 meters remaining in the race, Jill Sturkle had drawn the United States even.
Jill Sturkle has taken the lead. Here's Shirley Babashoff. She'll swim anchor in this women's 4x100-meter relay. East Germany and the United States in the lead in lane 3. East Germany's behind right now.
Shirley Babashoff, let's look at the world record split. World record 352. We're 248. Fabulous split. She's swimming against Claudia Hempel. Hempel was 6th in the 100. Babashoff was 5th. It's all on her back. The whole team has been depending on Shirley Babashoff this entire Olympics.
Shirley Babashoff has never won a gold medal. Shirley Babashoff in lane 3. The East German Claudia Hempel in lane 4. They're going to battle for the gold medal in the 4x100 women's freestyle relay. On the turn, Babashoff in the lead, but she's being contested very closely by Claudia Hempel. Babashoff in the lead. Lane 3, Hempel's coming on. Hempel coming on now. Babashoff spurts out. United States in the lead for the gold in the 4x100-meter freestyle relay. Shirley Babashoff stays in front. Here's the drive to the finish. Babashoff hanging on, going for the wall. And Babashoff is the winner. The United States has upset East Germany in the 4x100-meter freestyle relay. And Shirley Babashoff has finally acquired her first gold medal.
Shirley Babashoff had won the gold medal with her American teammates, but in many respects she would always be linked to Cornelia Ender. They were American and East German young women whose rivalry personified the highest order of Olympic confrontations.
I retired from competition after my showdown with Young. He went on to set the world record in the decathlon, a record I once held. I was lucky enough to return to the Olympics again, but not as a competitor. In 1984, when the Olympics came here to Los Angeles, I was asked to be the torchbearer who would run into the stadium and deliver the eternal flame to its cauldron. As I entered the Coliseum and then as I climbed the many stairs to the top, something I've been practicing in secret for days, the experience was not like ascending the victory stand again. It was not like winning another contest. The whole thing was bigger. I could see from the tunnel of that stadium that there was something special going on. As I ran, I could see tears in the eyes of some of the athletes. I felt a part of all those great Olympians on the field. I was a symbol for all of them. We were tied together in a common fabric. Maybe, after all rivals do, in a way, go down the road of life together. We met once, at one critical point, something happened. Someone won and someone lost. But that was less consequential than the bigger thing. We were bound together, perhaps forevermore.